Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Kirby Smart in Georgia. Starting to build some momentum here on the recruiting trail. I think we got a fascinating episode to dive into. I hope you guys find it as fascinating as I found it to kind of come up with some of these talking points, because not only do we have a multitude of commitments to talk about, I would make the argument that you might be seeing a little bit of a different strategy from Kirby Smart in Georgia as it pertains to building this 2027 high school recruiting class. What I mean by that is, if I were to sum up what Kirby Smart's really methodology is building this class is, give us all the elite athletes. We'll make them good football players. They might not be 4 and 5 star football players right now as they're going into their senior years of high school. But what we're going to do is we're going to bet on the guys that have all the traits to be great, and we're going to trust our coaching staff to get them right. And I don't totally hate it, because if there's one thing that we know about Kirby Smart and George is that, I think there's a little bit more of an apprehension for Kirby Smart to start giving out $500,000+ to these kids as 17-year-old kids who haven't played a snap of college football. I'm not saying Georgia is broke. I'm not saying Georgia is cheap. Georgia spends their money in different ways. How I think Georgia likes to spend a lot of their money is the guys that have proven that they're good football players for us at Georgia. We go and take care of them financially. And you see that Georgia never loses high-level contributors that they don't want to lose. They take care of their guys financially that are on their roster, that have shown they're good football players in this conference. There are a lot of other programs that are more than comfortable to pay some of these kids who are top 100 kids out of high school a lot of money, right? And I'm not saying one way is right and one way is wrong. All I'm saying is I think Kirby Smart's a little bit more apprehensive to do that. And so I think what Kirby Smart's trying to do is, hey, let's go find guys that, one, want to be Georgia Bulldogs, that, two, have the athletic profiles and athleticism to be really good football players. We'll go bet on those guys, even if they are only our 3 stars. And we might not sign a top 5 class in the country. We're going to bet on elite caliber athletes, and we're going to trust our coaching staff to make them elite football players. Man, I don't hate it. I don't hate it when you have the staff that Georgia does, when you have a proven track record of player development and getting the best out of the guys that are in your locker room. Go bet on the elite athletes and trust your staff to make them good football players. And I think that's what you're seeing Georgia do, because I've been on the message boards. I know there are some Georgia fans that are a little bit concerned that we're seeing, hey, Georgia's a little bit lower in the recruiting rankings than we're used to seeing them. I ain't going to tell you it ain't true, because it is. Everybody that has followed this knows that, hey, this might not be the highest class, ranked class, you might say, that Georgia has signed. I think that's because, hey, Kirby Smart might be doing some things a little bit differently. And as we break down the commitments that we're about to break down, I think the idea of what Georgia's trying to do is going to start to be a little bit more clear. Get into some of these commitments. I got 3 guys that I really want to get into before we do. And as always, the Georgia fans, appreciate you guys, man. I think it's going to be a really fun next couple of weeks to see how Georgia, or see what Georgia does in the summer. Buckle in. Appreciate you guys. If y'all are new, you enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And hey, here's the second part. The Georgia fans that are listening to this episode, you guys have followed Georgia on the recruiting trail. Shoot, some of y'all probably longer than I have. Do you see a little bit of a difference? How do you feel about the potential difference that we're seeing? I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Without further ado, let's get into what I think is the headliner and probably kind of bucking the trend a little bit. Joakim Gouda. This kid maybe doesn't have this elite athletic profile, but boy, is he a phenomenal football player. If I were to describe him in just a couple of words, IQ and violence, I mean, one of the most important parts about being a linebacker, you can talk about height, weight, speed, track and field times. All of that stuff matters. The biggest, strongest, fastest football players, they normally have the most success Saturday afternoons in the fall. This kid is a very good athlete. You don't have 4 stars next to your name if you're not. When you turn on the film, we got a nose for the football. We can pick through the traffic, extremely violent taking on blocks, extremely violent taking ball carriers to the ground. This is a kid that, best way to describe it is, oftentimes it's hard for these kids coming out of high school and trying to project, hey, which ones are going to be NFL draft picks, multi-year starters, especially in this conference. To me, this is about as blue chip as it gets. And I think the reason why you're seeing some discrepancies in some of the recruiting rankings, you look at On3 has him as the number 31 player in the country, the number 2 linebacker in the country, 24/7 Sports, 3-star 23rd linebacker. There aren't a ton of verified, track and field times that you can point to and say, hey, this kid is an elite caliber athlete. This is one of those where you kind of just got to trust what he's put out on Friday nights as a high school football player. I think that's what Georgia's trying to do here. This kid, boy, do I feel really confident is going to be a multi-year starter for Georgia, probably wear the green dot later on in his career. And when you have a chance to get a kid like that in state, go out and hit your layups. I think Georgia did that. Now, the other two names I want to talk about, freak shows, like DJ Dotson, 3-star offensive tackle prospect from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And, I think it's really easy for a lot of Georgia fans to let this one fly under the radar because, he's a 3-star kid. His measurables are lunacy. It's 6'7". He measured in, I believe, this weekend during his official visit at Georgia. And I'm guessing why this is why you saw Georgia push the way they did. 6'7", 349 pounds. And look, at 6, I don't think he carries the weight poorly. You've seen some offensive linemen come to Georgia and really have to reshape their body. The 350 that he carries, I don't think is all that sloppy. Now, 36.5-inch arms. I mean, you won't see a tackle prospect in this class have longer arms. An 87-inch wingspan. This kid physically is a freak show. Like 6'7", extremely long arms, extremely long wingspan. And I'll say this, when you turn on the film, there's two things that Number one, he gains a lot of depth in his pass protection sets. The change of direction is maybe a little bit a work in progress is probably the best way to put it. And I'll say this, when you're 6'7", you ain't going to move like a tackle that's 6'4". And so you can get away with some limitations when you're 6'7" and you got damn near 37-inch arms and an 87-inch wingspan. So I don't know if you'll ever be the fleetest of foot as an offensive tackle, but you can make that work when you have the kind of length and size that DJ Dotson has. Now, as a run blocker, kind of just overwhelms you with the size. There will be some times where he struggles to get leverage because he's 6'7". That's probably something that he's going to need to work on during his time at Georgia. But when you're that big, it gets a little bit easier to move bodies in the run game, even if you're not playing with an elite plat level. This is a kid that 3-star prospect, probably will fly under the radar, probably needs a year or two to get right. If we're talking about him as a starting left tackle year 3 of his career, if we're talking about him as a future first-round NFL draft pick, I personally would not be all that surprised, because if he can put it together as a football player, he's got all the traits in the world. And if you're Georgia, he has all the traits in the world to become an elite football player. Number 2, a very similar storyline here, and I'm going to do my best with the pronunciation, Olayiwola Taiwo. I hope I got that name somewhat close. Now, here's the first thing I'll say. Very rarely do I get concerned with recruiting rankings when it comes to in-state kids. I know Kirby Smart and the staff, they do their due diligence with these kids in the state of Georgia. And so 24/7 Sports might be putting out one ranking. I care more about how Kirby Smart views this kid. Boy, do they seem they like him. They like him enough to take his commitment in early June. 6'3", 225, 34-inch arms, 84-inch wingspan, extremely explosive off the football, needs to add a little bit of weight, needs to become a little bit more of a technically refined football player. But shoot, once again, we're talking about a kid that has all the traits to be an all-SEC football player, that you don't need to give $500,000 to come to Georgia as a freshman. Georgia will pay this kid. Like in year 2, or if he's going into year 3 and he projects as an all-SEC guy, Georgia will give him what he's worth. But I think Kirby Smart's more comfortable betting on these kind of guys that you don't have to give crazy money to. Will pay you when you show that you kind of worth being paid after your first 2 years on campus. Doing things differently. Again, normally we're used to talking about top 50 and top 20 nationally ranked guys, and I'm sure we will break down a couple of commitments that come in that high in the ranking. But you're seeing Kirby Smart do some things differently right now and bet on some guys with an elite athletic profile. say, hey, give us the best athletes. We'll make them the best football players. And it's hard for me to criticize that approach when you have a coaching staff that time and time again has shown me elite player development. That's kind of my take. I know some Georgia fans are a little bit concerned in terms of where recruiting might be going. I find it fascinating, and we'll kind of see how it plays out. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.